From years of anxiety to warrior and mentor, Bradley Robinson created the Anxiety Project to help you end your anxiety naturally. Let's mold the new you and let's end anxiety together.
Hello friends, welcome back to the Anxiety Project podcast. Welcome to episode 290 where we're diving into a Q&A today. I'm always excited about your guys' questions because you send in really great ones. And today I'm talking about health anxiety. The first question is pertaining to anxiety just popping up and thinking, well, I thought I had a handle on this, and you're reacting to it in a very negative way, thinking, well, I thought this was over and it's not over. And then I have another question around influencers and role models, whether someone is a positive role model in your life. And then the last question is about health anxiety and the health anxiety triggers and some of the big ones for me. So we're diving into all of that today. So stick around. This is going to be a juicy episode. So the first one comes in from Josh. He says, when I think my anxiety is over while driving one day, I get the flood of panic and I feel annoyed that I have yet to shake this off. I feel like it's a setback and I get that feeling of hopelessness. Please help. Very common, Josh. Just remember that. It's something I went through in my journey. You think that, well, you want to solve the problem and you want to move beyond it, and then it pops up. And it comes down to mindset. It comes down to your perceptions, because when it pops up, how are you reacting? And from what I see here is you're reacting in a very prey kind of way. And this thing is this dragon that, well, it's having a negative influence on you because you haven't yet let go of the emotional relevance this thing has over you. So you could ask yourself within that moment of the anxiety rising, well, what could this mean? Looking towards the unknown with curiosity and with the right perspective is going to loosen your grip and your grasp over this unfriendly character. And, anxiety, it's a very limbic response, right? It's an ancient system. It has more control over you than you of it. Remember that we've evolved around this system, and this system has been there since the beginning. So when anxiety pops up for me today, because, hey, look, anxiety is not going to go away forever. We need this system, because when we get bit by something in the world, or when things get too messy, it's this orientation mechanism that we need in order to, well, look towards the things that are causing us distress so that we can master them. We can reorient ourselves properly. Because one of our fundamental human needs is the need for uncertainty. We need that because we need to increase our capacity to tolerate uncertainty in the world, because there's just too much of it. There's too much of what we don't understand and too little of what we know. And yeah, we need to, and here's the thing about the little things that we know, that's like the existential view of reality is, we do what we can to buttress ourselves in security, but when the unknown kind of seeps its way in, the snake slithers into the Garden of Eden, it wakes us up. And it wakes us up in a way where we realize that there is this, what would you say, fallibility. There is this, we're vulnerable, we're naked in a world of uncertainty. That's useful. And it's how you perceive it, Josh. It really is because, I look towards these situations, this anxiety response as, well, what's happening in my life to make this come about? Like, where am I at this moment? Um, and am I just driving? Oh yeah, I'm just driving. So maybe it's not the driving. Okay, it's not the situation I'm in now. There's no lion pouncing on me right here and now. Well, what's going on in my life right now? Is there too many directions I'm taking all at once? Certainly that'll cause anxiety. Too many directions ahead of me will certainly cause anxiety. Are you having problems at work, in your relationship? Did you change your diet? Have you steered away from the path? Certainly, certainly, because as someone who is on a very, very strict diet, I notice that, you have a piece of cake or you have a pizza, a cheat meal, it greatly influences certainly a few days later of my life. It has a great impact. So little things, if you're not properly oriented, then sure, your anxiety can come about. It can stick around. It can stick around. It could be a sign. I look at anxiety as a sign. So anxiety pops up. Well, what am I doing in my life? Have I steered? Could I do things better? Really? Could I? And that's the thing. I take a step back. So, Josh, when this happens, okay, you have an opportunity here to ask yourself the right questions. Really, first thing, um, when you're in the midst of the flood of panic, it's how you communicate to yourself. If it kills me, you know what? Let it kill me. This is an opportunity. I think this is the big one. This is an opportunity to prove myself wrong. This is an opportunity to pay attention and look at my life. What's going on right now? I have to take a step back. And this is what I do. When the flood of panic does creep in, I take a step back without any distractions and I think, well, what's going on in my life? What's going on here? Am I not doing enough? Am I not doing enough? Anxiety is a teacher, and you are the curious student. You're not the prey animal. If you want to be, you know what? It's going to have its control over you. It's how you perceive it. The growth mindset is a practice. It's a practice, and it's of persistence. Every day, I have to maintain a certain routine. For me, because I know, and I've seen with many clients, when you steer off the path, when you have a bad day and you go, you know what, I'm just not going to do that today, and I'm not going to do this, and I'm not going to do that. It's the car metaphor, where if you look off into the distance to your left, you're going to unconsciously steer that car slowly, ever so slowly. It's going to drift to the left, and you're going to get off that road. Yes, you're going to get off that road. And so you notice where you're looking in your life, and just because it's difficult and challenging, well, all the better to do it, because these things are difficult to maintain some sanity in a world that's consistently trying to pull you into consumerism, materialism, right? To be unconscious, and society wants you to be unconscious. It doesn't want you to be awake. It wants you to be a consumeristic puppet, 100%. We have to, it's like the queen in Alice in Wonderland, the Queen of Hearts. She says to Alice, in my kingdom, you have to run as fast as you can just to stay in the same place. It's like maintaining your house, right? The house is in constant decay. Every day you have to clean up, you have to wash, you have to organize. It's like just for it to maintain a certain standard. So it's like yourself. For you to maintain a certain standard, you're going to have to work every day. You have to be aware of your orientation, what you're paying attention to, what are you valuing? on a day-to-day basis. So hopelessness, because you mentioned hopelessness in your question, and I love that because it's a lack of a goal. It's a lack of a goal. There's no progression towards anything worthwhile. When you feel that hopelessness, it's like you let the anxiety win. You feel like you're a puppet to your anxiety. Okay. No wonder you feel hopeless. I mean, do you have a vision? It's like if you have a vision of who you want to be, then you will ask yourself the right questions when panic actually comes about. Think about that. Think about that. So formulate a vision of the version of yourself 3 to 5 months down the road and what that looks like. Write it out on paper. You have to have a vision. And when we're not motivated enough, we're self-motivated. When we think, oh, I'm comfy now, life's going to do whatever it can to test you. That's Job. That's that in the book of Job. God makes a bet with the devil. The devil comes to God and says, hey, let me at your best man, the one highest in faith. And, God's like, here's Job. No matter what you throw his way, he's going to maintain faith. And the devil's like, okay, let me have at him. And God makes a bet. Job will maintain faith. And Job has every catastrophe thrown at him. I mean, all of his friends come to him, complaining to how he's a sinner and how he, steered off the path. And, Job is, everything worthwhile in his life, he loses and he gets a disease, but he, in the end, maintains faith. And I think about my life a lot when I read that story. I think about how worse things can get, how much worse. Because I've been in very terrible places, and I think, well, it can be a lot worse. And I know the steps. I know the steps to those places. So every day I have to maintain a faith that, life is going to be a challenge. But I'm going to confront the challenge forthrightly, voluntarily, every day. And look, I'm going to stave off chaos as much as I can. But I know it's right around the corner. It's gonna come out. So anxiety is never over. For me, I just get good, by practicing. I get good at noticing it and the response to the anxiety. So thank you, Josh, for that great question. JD, thank you. Here we go. How can you tell right away whether a role model like a YouTuber or Instagrammer is positive for you? Sometimes I follow a channel and I follow a channel convincing myself they have a great worth ethic and content. But I later feel like they added no value to my life. Heck, I even feel worse about it afterwards at the end. Yeah, JD, that's a really good question. I've fallen into this lots of times in my life. And I'll give you an example. There was a vlogger I was watching. I grew up going to Disney World a lot. My family would take us every year. So there's a nostalgia to Disney World. And if you've been, the nostalgia. It's a crazy dopaminergic experience. You're engulfed in this beautiful and fun experience. And I can't wait to go back. And I always have a love for Disney, but I stumbled upon YouTubers, like vloggers who go to Disney World and they walk around the parks and they talk about the food and they go on the rides, and I got hooked. I got hooked on these videos. And And how I convinced myself that these videos were useful, it's funny because I thought, whoa, look at these guys, man. They got so famous, they got so well known. They're making a life for themselves by consistently going to these parks and making videos every day. And their worth ethic is so good. And well, meaning, well, it's a positive thing, but it's not, because I convinced myself like this is good, like it's amazing how people can do this, their worth ethic. But I noticed over time though, a lot, like I would be looking forward to watching these videos every day. I'd think about them a lot. They would hold a lot of mental real estate in my mind. So notice that with you and your videos that you're watching or podcasts or whoever, how much mental real estate is that taking up in your mind? Okay. And more importantly, what is the spirit that they embody? Okay. So, right away, because that's a good question. I want to emphasize that part of your question. Like, how can you tell right away? And I think it's by asking this question: what spirit do they embody? Is it the spirit of materialism? Because yeah, I've fallen into many vloggers and YouTubers who review products and like and items, and right, and there's something to that. It's like, what's the next better one? They have a routine every time they create their video. It's like a routine of of examining the items, and we're attracted to this, right? And I think paying attention to how it makes you feel, but also the spirit of that. Because what you pay attention to the most will become center value. Okay? So look to their spirit that they embody. Is it one that is founded in pleasure? Like, are they living on Pleasure Island? Are they worshiping the finite or the infinite, right? And yeah, look, once in a while, go on, watch a video. Sure. But when you notice that it's taking up time, that it's taking up a lot of mental real estate, well, then you have to really think about these hard-hitting questions. There's something really, well, incredibly attractive about those who make a living playing a video game, vlogging, collecting things, reviewing things, movies. There's something incredibly attractive, right? Like, imagine making a living doing something that you love to do, or, actually making a living going to Disney World and documenting it like you are a journalist, is something so incredibly interesting about that. And that's how I fell into those videos. But in the end, what's funny about the Disney vloggers is this is when I knew my habit got bad, is when I started to actually think, maybe I can move there and start this myself. Maybe I can be a vlogger. And I started to think about these things. And this is when I had the podcast. This is when I had the Anxiety Project channel, all of this. And I'm a coach. And I'm like, and then I stepped back and I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing? It's because only when I separated myself from these videos, I noticed the truth that I was subjecting myself to. Like, it was taking up, like the ideas were starting to take a hold over me. Personal growth is not found in a video game. The progression of a video game, that video game character, it adds meaning because you're building skills and you're searching and you're collecting items. But what happens when the game is over? Because you reach an end. There's only so much of the game you can explore. So, you are the same as a person. After you shut off the computer, it's like you're stagnant. Yeah, you progressed, you had an experience within the video game world, but what about reality? What happens when you come back here, now. You put your head on the pillow, or it's more complicated than that, because if you read the book Dopamine Nation, Anna Lemke talks about how these things become more real than reality. It becomes more real, and we get sucked into kind of like a fake world. There's something very unsettling about that, I would say, because the dopamine deficit you experience when you're separated from the video game, it pulls you to the next session. It pulls you to the next one, the next one, the next one. So in the end, who is a positive model? Well, one that seeks out the answers to life's toughest questions. Because life inevitably, it will cut you down at your weakest point. So if you have a lot of weak points, there's a lot to cut down. There's a lot to cut down. But when you build yourself up on a foundation, which we'll get into in the next question, when you build on a foundation of trust and security, and you start to confront the reality, the tough aspects of reality, start to be disciplined, then look, you're going to be motivated by higher aims, by personal development, rather than like a fictional character development in a game. Absolutely. And you know what? I do like games, and I will dive into a game here and there, but I know that there's only a certain amount of time I'm willing to set aside for a game. And when I play a game for an hour, I really appreciate the game. I really appreciate it, because I'm not overturning that dopamine system. I'm not overturning that one. So thanks for the question. Thanks for the question, JD. And now we have Claire. She says, what were some of the big health anxiety triggers for you? So Claire, my identity was of insecurity, okay? And that makes sense, because I had no trust. I was serving my inner desires for comfort and excitement, like on my own terms, right? Like I was seeking out the finite in my life, whether it was sex, pornography, weed, just going out and causing trouble with my friends, really just going out and, going to a club, or it's, these things add uncertainty. They're so attractive, because, we're always seeking out something. We're always seeking out something. So when I separated, when I knew that my life reached kind of like a dead end with my severe anxiety disorder, I knew that I needed to reorient myself, because I had to come to the realization that what I was doing up until this point was not functioning. Even the reassurance I was getting from the people around me, I can't rely on those things anymore. And it's a terrifying thing. It's a terrifying thing. But it was necessary, because then I could start to build on skills and knowledge that would rightfully guide me into the right direction. So for me, I was lacking in competence, because I lived in a bubble of conformity. So when the reality of existence slithered in, it awakened me to my nakedness, like in the Adam and Eve story. So I realized I was vulnerable. I There was a lack of security. I didn't know how to deal with this. And recovery is all about building an inner security. It's all about building inner security, trust, increasing my tolerance to discomfort. Okay, so that's when I started to venture outside of what I found to be my safe place. Even my home then became a place of uneasiness because you're never going to escape the darkness within your own mind, the fears that are lurking within. And so you slowly step outside of what's comforting. And literally for me was walking a block from my house. Seriously, that's how low my life had become. It was low. I was so behind the normal average person. I was so behind. So my life, it was debilitating. I was frozen with fear. I felt stagnant. And of course, depression and hopelessness came about because I'm at the bottom of the competence hierarchy. I have no competence. I'm not, I literally, I embodied the prey animal. So I had no trust in going out into the world and into a job and trusting myself that I could handle the uncertainty of that. I always looked to my future as something very fearful. Everything was everything embodied fear. So my default mode of being was attuned to my health and this overly sensitive alignment. This would pick up the frequencies of the snake. Okay, so I was hyper aware of the snakes of reality, I guess you can say. I was hyper aware of what could do me in. Like when people would talk about cancer or illness, I would perk up and pay attention, thinking, oh my God, I probably have that. I can get that. We're so vulnerable. We're so vulnerable. I'm so vulnerable. And so those billboards on the street corners of health, violence in TV shows and movies would trigger me. So yes, the world is a scary, dark place, one that I cannot handle. So the mind jumps to the meta snake. What's the meta snake? What's the snake of all snakes? Well, the problem of all problems. And that's really what you want to pursue as the ultimate question. How can I handle the problem of all problems? Because you're building on your competency. When you see yourself progressing in overcoming big problems. Big problems. For me, it was going out into public places and riding the wave of panic, having faith. I was angry where I was at in my life. I was angry to the point where, you know what, if it kills me, let it kill me. So I hope I get a panic attack today. I was telling myself that every day. I hope I get a panic attack today. I'm done. I'm so fed up with this. Bring it on. I wanted to be the solver of all problems. That's the ideal, to build a new inner security, that resilience. And there's a great symbol of the lotus flower that's pushing its way up through the depths, the murky waters, and then it blossoms on the surface, and then there's the Buddha inside, the enlightened one. Right? It moves up through the murky water. And, as you know, Carl Jung talks about the water as being the symbolic representation of the unconscious, the journey through the unconscious, right? And on the surface, we are the journey through the unconscious leads us to here's another great symbol. I was thinking of Pinocchio, where he journeys down into the water to find the whale, the thing that's most fearful to him, the darkest thing that he could ever confront, and to save his father, because he knew his father was down there somewhere. And what's funny is that, he got an inkling from the golden fairy, a hint like where his father, where he could be. My father's swallowed by what a it's so preposterous. My father's swallowed by a whale, and he's at the bottom of the ocean. Okay, and he goes there. And he jumps in to revivify what's dead. It's like myself dealing with anxiety. It's like the culture, that potential at the bottom of my unconscious mind that is dormant, right? And I have to journey down there. And it's like Jonah and the whale. So Pinocchio journeys down into the unconscious mind, to rescue the dead parts of himself and to revivify, to make new. And when he returns to the surface, when he's successful, he's dead, but he's reborn into a real person. This is the death and rebirth story. The phoenix rising from the ashes, the parts of us that we kill off, but we become more whole as a consequence. We kill off the dead parts, but we integrate the new. Because to kill off the dead parts, you have to venture into the unknown. And the unknown makes new parts, and the old parts die away. But you have to be willing to burn away the old parts because, hey, look, we don't want to, because they're a part of who we are. We don't want to burn those away because it's familiar. Really, that's what it is. It's familiar. But what else? What other choice do we have? And the vision question is, what does this new Brad look like? Because I knew that I had no respect for myself. I had no inner security, confidence, no tolerance to pain. And Anna Lemke, in her book, Dopamine Nation, she says that our tolerance to pain greatly decreases the more we are living in the bubble of excess dopamine. When we're living on Instagram, computer games, alcohol, weed, sex, pornography, food, our tolerance to the unknown, discomfort, greatly decreases. But when we begin to separate ourselves from that consumeristic way of being, the things that have a grip over us, then the things that we deemed to be uncomfortable before don't seem uncomfortable now, don't seem too challenging now. So how much dead weight are you carrying? It's a great question, because to build on the health anxiety identity, you have to build a healthy identity, the opposite. You have to be a student. You have to learn. You have to jump into the unknown. Trust in the process. And that's where I'm going to leave you today on this podcast episode. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in this week. I love talking about the unconscious mind, journeying down into that. It's for me, it's so appealing to me because I was always avoiding what's uncomfortable. I was always afraid of confronting the things lurking underneath the surface, the shadow elements of my psyche. But when you do, and you start to embrace those terrible emotional moments of your past, you start to perceive them differently. That's what it means to reframing the past, perceiving them differently, learning the lessons, because now you know what to look out for in the future if you don't look into what did you in the past. When you do, your unconscious can finally let it go. It doesn't have to hold on to it as much as it is now. Because you know by examining it how you wandered into that place and how you could better deal with that if it does come across your path later in life. I love that. But rise above anxiety, and I will see you on the next podcast episode. Bye for now.
Brad's powerful anxiety recovery program is now available at unpluganxiety.com. The Anxiety Project program is downloadable and puts the power of anxiety recovery in your own hands. Visit unpluganxiety.com